We have countless ways to spend time, so why this? We open booster packs without knowing what's inside. We shuffle carefully built decks in random order. We place them face down and begin drawing cards. From the very beginning, card games are built around uncertainty. And for the most part, we seem to enjoy it. But what if your opponent's deck felt a little too consistent? What if every game unfolded in almost the same way? The same opening, the same combo, the same ending. Would you still want to play a second game or a third? At what point does consistency become repetition? And how predictable can a deck become before it starts to lose what makes the game interesting? What is variance? Players don't experience variance as a mathematical concept. We experience it as uncertainty. It's the moment before you draw your next card, wondering whether your opponent has the answer. It's the feeling that despite careful planning, the outcome isn't decided until you reach across the table and shake your opponent's hand. Uncertainty gives every decision weight, because the future is still unknown. Without it, every game would gradually begin to resemble the last. The unknown creates tension. Tension creates anticipation. And anticipation is one of the things that keeps every game feeling like it could unfold differently. And yet, players spend countless hours trying to remove the very uncertainty they seem to enjoy. Deck lists are refined, card ratios are adjusted, strategies are tested, matchups are practiced, players search for overlooked interactions and more reliable lines of play. Every decision serves the same purpose: reduce uncertainty, increase consistency. The result is almost paradoxical. Players willingly shuffle a carefully constructed deck. The deck is still random, it always will be, but it has been engineered to behave as though it isn't. That raises the question, what determines how consistent a deck can become? The answer doesn't begin with the cards themselves. It begins with the rules that governs every deck. Before a single card is drawn, every player inherits the same framework. Deck size, copy limits, opening hand, legends, mulligans. These aren't simply rules for playing the game. They're the boundaries that determine how consistent a deck is allowed to become. What are we trying to measure? The question seems simple. How consistent is a deck? But for this discussion, we need something more precise. A deck isn't built to draw every card equally. It's built to accomplish specific goals. To establish pressure, to find removal, to assemble a combo, to answer a threat. The cards themselves aren't the objective. They're the tools used to achieve it. We're measuring how reliably a deck produces the outcome it was designed to create. There are countless outcomes a deck may be built to achieve. Rather than attempting to model all of them, I'll focus on a few. Not because they're the most important outcomes, but because they illustrate the underlying principle which applies to everything else. The opening hand is the first meaningful measure of a deck's consistency. Every game begins with 6 cards, making it the largest single draw players receive without additional effects. For many decks, the opening hand determines whether the game begins as intended. At the same time, not every card is equally desirable. Late-game finishers, expensive reactive cards, or narrow answers often represent resources that cannot yet be used. The ideal opening hand isn't simply 6 powerful cards. It's 6 cards that allow the deck to execute its plan. The opening hand establishes the starting point for every calculation that follows. The Mulligan is one of the game's first attempts to reduce variance. Rather than forcing players to accept every opening hand, the rule allows a single opportunity to start over. Importantly, the Mulligan doesn't remove randomness. The second hand is just as random as the first. The Mulligan is simply another independent draw. From a gameplay perspective, however, it serves a much larger purpose. It increases the likelihood that both players begin the game with a functional opening hand, reducing the number of games decided before meaningful decisions have even been made. After the opening hand and mulligan, the math continues to change one card at a time. Every draw gives the deck another chance to find the outcome it was built to produce. Starting with the 6-card opening hand, each turn reveals one additional card. As more cards are seen, the probability of finding our target steadily increases. This represents the minimum consistency a deck can expect without any additional draw effects. Every measurement that follows will be compared against this baseline. Of course, that baseline assumes players draw only one card each turn. In practice, this rarely happens. My experience with the print and play decks suggests the average is considerably higher. Card draw effects are common. Rather than seeing one new card each turn, players often see 2, and in some games even 3. This doesn't create a new probability curve. It compresses the existing one. The destination doesn't change, but the timeline does. This is what makes card draw so powerful. It doesn't merely increase the number of options available, it accelerates consistency. The copy limit only applies to individual cards. It doesn't apply to the jobs those cards perform. If your objective is to find one specific card, you can only ever have 3. But if your objective is to find a removal spell, a draw spell, or an early attacker, the picture completely changes. A second card capable of performing the same role effectively expands the pool of successful outcomes. The probability of drawing any particular card hasn't changed. The probability of drawing a solution has. Different cards, the same job. Deck construction isn't just about increasing the chance of drawing a card. It's about increasing the chance of accomplishing a goal. Up to this point, we have been discussing finding a card. Legends work differently. They remove the search entirely. If a legend is central to a deck strategy, that piece is far easier to reach. This becomes even more significant when the legend is only one piece of a larger interaction. A strategy that would normally require finding 2 specific cards now requires finding only 1. I call this the legend effect because it fundamentally changes how consistency should be measured for this card type. The opening hand, mulligan, natural card draw, copy limits, legends. Taken individually, each has only a small impact. Each nudges probability in a particular direction, but none of them exist in isolation. They compound. As the game progresses and more cards are seen, the probability of producing a desired outcome steadily increases. Eventually, there may be a point where the probability becomes so high that the outcome is no longer surprising. It becomes expected. I think of this as critical mass, not a specific turn, not necessarily a specific percentage, but the point where consistency becomes reliable enough, the variance no longer meaningfully shapes the outcome. If it exists, players will find it. The question was always, what makes a card game feel like a card game? Too much variance, and decisions begin to matter less than luck. Too little variance, and every game begins to feel familiar. Somewhere between those two extremes, we find the game. A place where preparation is rewarded without making the outcome feel inevitable. I don't know exactly where that balance exists. In fact, I think finding it is one of the hardest problems in game design. But I do think it can be measured. And if it can, it may tell us why we keep coming back to play another game.